sometimes, Jason, we'll continue to do what we need to do, man, and we'll knock on certain doors, right? And nobody will answer. But with developing consistency and having that self-confidence about yourself, it's okay because you'll keep going. And then finally, man, sometimes we'll knock on those doors and someone will answer. But guess what? They might tell us no. But no just means not yet.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we're interviewing leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, I'm here with Daron Franklin. He's a personal success expert and the owner of F42 Empowerment. Thanks for being here today, Daron.
Jason, man, I'm looking forward to it. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here too, because what you do is you work primarily with young men on achieving success. And it seems like it's different for young men today than when you and I were growing up. So to get started, what are some of the challenges that young men are facing today that they need help with?
Some challenges are, man, procrastination, confidence, character, developing consistency. Just some of those things, man, that, that confidence probably been the biggest one. That just kind of is the catalyst for decision making for them personally.
Yeah, and I think young men have always had to find their way on developing their self-confidence. It certainly seems different now. Do you think there's anything consistently behind where young men struggle with self-confidence today versus when you and I were growing up?
Oh yeah, because obviously, man, society has evolved, and there's so many more things that they compare themselves to at the tip of their fingers, right? Whereas for you and I, we may have to compare ourselves to certain people or certain things that we saw on television, but now it's at the tip of their fingers, all access all the time, and they feel like they have to be included. So much more.
Yeah, it was really different for us. You know, we would see athletes or celebrities on TV, and as young men, we would say, "I would love to get there, but I'm not there yet." And Now, young people, not just young men, young people are really bombarded with their peers on social media who present kind of like their best lives, not necessarily their real lives on social media, and it's really hard. It's even hard for me as an adult to determine what's real and what's the character people are playing on social media.
Yeah, man, I would definitely agree with that. And with a background in education, secondary education, I used to share with students and even players as a former football coach that, hey, and even my two kids who are older teenagers now, like, hey, man, a lot of things are just for entertainment purposes. What you see on social media, as it says, it's social media, right? It's a part of media. I can't always say that it's always the truth. Yes, there are some great substance behind it, but I just to share with people, man, that, hey, it's not the all be all from what you see, right? And as you talked about, just understanding that, hey, it's a process for everyone to get to where they are.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And you mentioned that you were a teacher for many, many years. You were a football coach for many, many years. Tell us a little bit about your journey, both professionally and then some of the personal challenges you faced that led you to what you're doing now.
Oh man, for a guy like myself, someone like myself with over 2 decades of being able to develop people in school communities, that was very gratifying, right? I remember I started off, man, in this coincidence that Coach Frank Wilson is now the interim head coach at LSU for the LSU football team right now, right? And he was the first guy that gave me an opportunity to coach down at Oak Perry Walk in Algiers, Louisiana, basically on the west bank of New Orleans. And from there, I'll tell you, Jason, we had a few guys who went on to play in the NFL and signed about 17 kids to Division I scholarships. And I was like, man, this is something. I'm looking forward to this. There were coaches on that staff who are now Power 5 assistant coaches and have been head coaches in other colleges. And I thought every job was going to be like that. All right. and we went on to the state championship game in the Superdome. And unfortunately, we lost to John Curtis High School. But man, that's what my coaching and teaching journey started. And just the gratification of those kids coming back to me every day. Hey, Coach Frank, can you show me this? Oh, man, this worked. And from there, man, I've gone through and became a head coach myself over at H.L. Bourgeois High School down in Gray, Louisiana. I don't know if you're familiar with Swamp People, but that setting It's down on the bayou in that area. Awesome community, man. And from there, began to explore outside of Louisiana. And at the time, my family and I moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I became a head coach at Fort Worth Southwest High School, an athletic director. And that was an awesome opportunity, right? Leading an organization, not only just a football team, but also a sports athletic organization, being responsible for multiple teams, right? Being responsible for middle schools and even the elementary schools within our community, right? So, Jason, what I did, man, is I took that task and went beyond the edge, right? And that's the framework that I use within my coaching. And basically, man, I just went beyond the job description of being an athletic director. I infused everything with my team, my coaches, and parents, infused it all into making that the best opportunity for our kids to compete and have the best experience for their high school careers. And I just found out after that, Jason, that I wanted to do something more, honestly, man. Being confined to maybe just one school community, but now speaking all over the world on stages and working with not only males, but also females too, that are determined to be successful, and also working with businesses and organizations, man, to help to bridge that gap, that communication gap of the multi-generational workforce. So having those experiences, those 2 decades of education and coaching has definitely prepared me for F42 empowerment and guiding people to go beyond the edge.
Yeah, I definitely want to emphasize you don't just work with young men, you work with businesses, you work with young women as well. But I'm really fascinated by what you do with young men because no one needs to hear you and I say anymore. Young men are kind of in a crisis in American society right now. And there's a lot we as older men probably need to do to help them out. I do want to go back for a minute. You talked about that first coaching job you had, and you talked about how that was kind of lightning in a bottle, right? You thought all your jobs were going to be like that. And whether it's sports, excuse me, whether it's sports or I found in the Air Force, in my time in the Air Force, not every squadron has that type of cohesion, that type of success that other teams have. And I'm curious, what do you attribute it to what the head coach did, both with the coaching staff and the players, to have such success on that team?
I'll tell you what, Jason, I spoke about that team, man, and I've really been blessed to be able to coach with multiple guys and coach multiple programs in the New Orleans area. And that's obviously where I'm born and raised here. But one thing about Coach Frank Wilson that I noticed, man, in that short time of being with him, he was very authentic. He also demanded the best from his players and coaches. But also, I think the biggest thing that I gathered from that and helped me within my leadership was how he brought in the community, right? And I've always shared this with some coaches who I've done some development with. I believe that in order for you to be an elite high school program, I believe you have to have 3 out of 4 things. Not going all the way into sports, but I saw this with Coach Frank. You have to have the administrative support at the school level. You definitely need to have the players, the coaches, but the last thing is the community support. And he showed us that. And I just remember, man, after games, the parents would have food in the gymnasium for not only the players, but also for the coaches, right? After games. And at Berman Stadium, man, it's called, there was a group of fans called the Gumbo Crew, right? And man, I remember him having fireworks when we ran out the tunnel. So he made an atmosphere that was, inclusive to that community. It made that community feel so proud. And that was the support that we needed, and not only that, man, but also a good time at St. Augustine High School under the leadership of Coach David Yak Johnson. And St. Augustine High School, I'm quite sure around the world is familiar with them, but, had the chance to coach guys like Tyron Matthew and Leonard Fournette. And being a part of that staff, Coach Dave Johnson did some similar things in bringing in the community for an all-boys parochial school here in New Orleans, all-boys African-American parochial school.
Yeah, I think it's so important to talk about the community aspect because if we want to help our young people, we really need to do it as a community. It can't just be on them to figure things out
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. And it can't just be on their teachers or their coaches or mentors. As a community, we really need to help our young people rise up to the occasion and meet the moment of what's happening in the 21st century.
And you know what, Jason, that's the challenge now, honestly. Speaking with my lady, man, just about some things that are happening in our world today. And unfortunately, I shared this with some students here in Louisiana and Baton Rouge area the other day with junior achievement. And I shared with them, like, hey, man, I know that society, unfortunately, has kind of created a pathway where everybody could do things on their own. Right. But as you just mentioned, and as I just described, there's really not much success that you can get on your own. You're going to need someone to better help you. And that's where that community comes in. I think, man, as you mentioned, more people in our age range that can continue to develop the younger generation and have them to also understand that, hey, it's good to have your own voice, but also have an understanding of where you come from and have an understanding that someone's going to have to help you to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, you can only do so much on your own. And that's important for us to remember as individuals that we need help.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for us to remember as members of the community that young people are going to need some kind of help from us, whether that's advice, mentoring, whatever it is. So personal success and human performance, they're pretty broad categories. What are some of the specific areas of performance you feel are especially important for young men to be working on now?
Well, I'll tell you this, and before I answer that, if you don't mind, I'll go back to a statement that you just made as far as the help. Could I revisit that for a second?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, one thing I talk about, man, in my Beyond the Edge, building confidence, speaking engagement is help, right? Especially when I'm talking with teenagers. And what I share with them is, it's not the type of help where someone feels unsafe, right? But I share with them that, hey, man, help is a word, but if you break down the spelling or the acronym, I call it, have you ever learned in the progress? And it goes back to that community aspect of things. I share with those students whenever I give that talk, or even with organizational leaders, with our young people, and I'm talking about young people from teenagers to young adults, right? Most times, man, they just don't have the confidence to ask for help, right? And what I try to get them to understand is, it's have you ever learned in the progress? So, Jason, there may be some things that I see that you're doing in your field of work or your personal development. But as a man, I understand that, hey, if you've already gone through it, man, I'm going to come up and ask you, hey, Jason, can you share with me some things that, I should be aware of as I go through this progress, as I go through this process of making progress? Well, that's all help stands for. And I just kind of get them to understand that, man, you have to ask for help. Have you ever learned in the progress? Because there's some people that have already climbed that mountain and they'll reach back and help you and pull you up. But you have to be able to ask, have you ever learned in the progress? Because I believe, man, experience is the best teacher. It never needs a substitute.
Yeah, it's so important to ask for help. And I want to get into the building the confidence piece to do that in a minute. But I was having this conversation this morning and I kind of realized we also have to recognize when people are offering us help. Sometimes, especially as young men, we're independent, we're individuals, and that's great. We should do that. But sometimes we don't always recognize when people are offering help to us, and we kind of turn it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where that personal development comes in, right? That ego, man. That ego sometimes ego and pride, right, can take us on a ride that we don't really want to go on. you know.
Yeah. For sure. So learn to ask for help and also learn to recognize when people are offering you help and don't just push that away. I think that's really important.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is.
All right, so let's get into the self-confidence stuff. What advice do you have to help young men who may be watching or listening? When I say young men, now that I'm in my 50s, when I say young men, I don't just mean like teenagers or kids under 21. I mean people like up to like 35. That's kind of when I started to really feel like an adult.
Yep. So as far as the self-confidence, first of all, man, I think that it does kind of depend on what buckets we're putting them in from an age category. I mean, obviously, someone that's in their 30s, most times is going to have different experiences than someone that's an older teenager or a college student, right? But that self-confidence, man, the first thing that we always talk about, and I had a conversation with a gentleman this morning who's going to be entering the Beyond the Edge coaching program, we always talk about creating and celebrating small wins. Okay. And what I mean by that is, I share a story, man, about a kid named Drew. And Drew was just this guy that, he didn't have much self-confidence. His parents worried about him all the time, man. He really tried to hide from himself and hide from society and community and things like that. But he had a teacher, man, that saw something in him and encouraged him to try out for the middle school basketball team. Okay. Now look, Jason, he made the team, but he made the B team. All right. However, by him making that B team, man, he was able to develop some leadership skills by being able to communicate and help the guys around him. But then he also saw that he was able to make some new friends. He had some success on the court. So his coach had to pull him to the side one day and say, hey, man, listen, first of all, I'm proud of you for being able to come out and even try out, right? But I also want you to see that, man, you've developed and you've grown. Those are small wins, right? Because, Jason, you and I know with the experience of life that we've had, man, that those small wins turn into life-changing moments. So the first thing as far as building that self-confidence is being able to create and celebrate small wins. And being able to work with those men and women of those age ranges and helping them to identify what a small win looks like, right? A small win for a young man that's at, 35 years old, it may be, hey, not only did I show up to work every week, but I was able to contribute to a project, right? And I was acknowledged for contributing to a project at work. Whereas before, my opinion may have never been asked. But because someone saw that I was growing and developing, man, that's a small win, right? Because you and I both know if that person continues to contribute more and more, then they can elevate to higher heights. Higher heights can change into life-changing moments. They maybe get a raise. They maybe get an opportunity to lead a project on their own, So creating those small wins is basically the first step in building that self-confidence.
Yeah, I love that. Recognizing your own small wins and the wins of others is really important. But what I really loved about the two examples you gave is that not only did those young men recognize the small wins, and maybe it wasn't the big win that they wanted to get, but they recognized the small wins. They also both recognize that when you get a small win, it also comes with opportunities. And so your young man who was on the basketball team, he saw this as an opportunity to make new friends. He saw it as an opportunity to develop his skills, to build himself up, to be ready for the bigger win later on. And I think that's so important to not just recognize the small wins, but see that even a small win comes with opportunities.
Most definitely, man. And sometimes, without opportunities, Jason, there are three things that can happen. Sometimes we'll have the key and we'll walk in right through that door, right? And that key unlocks the door for us. Sometimes, Jason, we'll continue to do what we need to do, man, and we'll knock on certain doors, right? And nobody will answer. But with developing consistency and having that self-confidence about yourself, it's okay because you'll keep going. And then finally, man, sometimes we'll knock on those doors and someone will answer. But guess what? They might tell us no. But no just means not yet. Okay? And that kind of goes back to, man, a framework that I've used and developed after being an athletic coach, because certain kids used to want to always be on the varsity or, coach, man, I can contribute this way and that way. And I would have to make an assessment with them and sometimes even with their parents and their position coaches and say, hey, right now, the role that you're playing is what we need you to do to contribute to our team's success. You're just not ready yet to be in a larger role or more impactful role. And that's where, taking that transferable, experience to now outside of the athletic field into more of a life situation, that I help those young men to understand that, hey, man, sometimes you're going to have that key. It's going to unlock. You're going to walk right into that opportunity. Sometimes you're going to knock. It won't be answered. And sometimes some people are going to tell you no, but no just means not yet.
Yeah, I see that all the time as well. It seems like in American society, at least, we've developed a real fear of failure, and not just in young men, in young women, right? In people of all ages, we have this real fear of failure right now. What do you think is behind that fear of failure, and why do we need to get past it?
It's a good question, Jason. It's a question, man, that I think we all need to continue to have as just people, right? That fear of failure. I would say that again, just having so much access to information and access to people's lives as we started to show off. Some people may feel a sense of embarrassment with failure, and that's a feeling. That's okay, right? Because we're human, right? But you can't stop. As long as that sun shines every day, hey, that means you got more time on the clock to keep going. So with that failure deal, it's almost like you have to understand, and it also comes from this, Jason. Unfortunately, man, in our education system, we have so much standardized testing, and sometimes we look at the quantitative aspect of assessing someone's talent or performance and not really seeing the qualitative, right? And if you don't have a background or if you don't have that support at home and you're just that average to not so good student numbers wise, then you could feel like you're a failure. And that could ooze into your life outside of academia. I mean, I've had students tell me before, Coach, man, I've never passed a math test before. You know, but after leaving my Algebra 1 class, I felt like I was the best Algebra 1 teacher on this side of heaven. They were equipped not only with the tools and the strategies, but that confidence to go attack that test and believe in what they were doing. But I always share with people this, and even myself, man, with some things that I failed in life, it's a lesson for you. If you continue as a human being to be a lifelong learner, I think that you'll overcome failure pretty easily.
I think that's really great advice to not just focus on the quantitative, but focus on the qualitative in our own lives. Because so much of our society is focused on the quantitative, whether that's the amount of dollars you've made, the amount of points you scored, the number of records you've sold, the number of followers you have on social media. Everything we talk about is quantitative, and it's really important for all of us to remember the qualitative parts of that. And as we mentor young men and young women, help remind them of, look, you may not have as many, you may not be making as much money as someone else, but you're making the money to pay your bills. You have a decent life, and I know you want more, but look at the qualitative side of this, not just the number.
Yeah, and it's a thin line, man, because yes, we do need to be able to collect data, right? Quantitative data to be able to make certain decisions about things in life, right? But when we're dealing with people, I believe that we have to look at the qualitative things along in conjunction with the quantitative data. Because we're not talking about building a car, we're not talking about building a spaceship and understanding the angles and the velocity and all the physics that come with those types of things, right? When we talk about building people, man, it goes into, the feelings. It goes into the skills that they may have. It goes into their emotions, right? And all those things I believe are measured qualitative wise. And
Yeah.
that's something that will work with leaders on understanding also, the capacity and capability of the staffs that they lead.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So I'm really curious because you are coming with a lot of answers today, and you've talked about you've had your own struggles, you've failed at times. How have you had to evolve as a teacher, a football coach, a performance coach, as the times and as young people's lives have changed over the years?
Well, I'm a lifelong learner, Jason, and I'm always evolving with the times as far as the technology and things of that nature, right? Asking questions, you know, starting different opportunities. I'm always going to ask questions, man, because again, I believe that experience is the best teacher, and it doesn't always have to be your experience. You can learn from other people's experiences too. So I'm a guy that's going to ask questions about new ventures and things of that nature. As far as when I used to be in a classroom, teaching wise, I used to ask my students. What I learned is this, and unfortunately, man, I think that this is a big struggle in education. Some of us are it's a challenge to relinquish control. But once I figured out that, hey, if you have procedures in place and once you build rapport with students and you find out about their lives outside of what you want them to do, they'll do anything for you. Right? And it's a situation, man, where I had to relinquish control. Meaning I had to shift my mindset from, I'm not interested in controlling these young people because I have power, but I'm going to develop them based off of the influence and impact that I have. And now I've transformed that from Coach Frank in the classroom, Coach Frank on the football field, to now Coach Frank and Sir Bryant, the businessman, with helping leaders to understand that too, man. Look, I understand that, hey, some people's jobs are tied to performance. Some people's jobs are tied to a bottom line. But if you're working with humans, I believe you better find out ways to get to know them outside of just their job. I believe that you better find out why they're doing what they're doing at their job. And I believe you have to find out if they want to advance in their careers. Because I believe if you know those things, you'll know how to develop them. Because everybody has different developmental, comes into new places with different stages of development.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Over the generations, they've done these workplace studies, and regardless of which generation it is, there are three things that everybody wants from a workplace, and that is, one, to have purpose and meaning in what they're doing. Two, to trust and be trusted, or as you put it, to be cared about people, to be cared about by the people they work for and work with. And then to have a voice at the table, to be part of the decision-making process. That has not changed since they've been doing these surveys for almost 100 years. And you really described it really well, what not just teachers and coaches need to do with young people, but leaders need to be able to do with the people who work for them and their organizations to really build that rapport.
And it's a challenge, man, because as a leader, sometimes you're focused on so many different things, right? Obviously, you have to build you a good team, right? But you also have to be able to find that time, that intentional time, to be able to relate with your staff. And with your staff, I'm talking about, if I'm a leader of an organization and I have a supervisory staff of 4 to 5 people, and then underneath them I have a staff of people that are 20 to 50 to 100 wide, right? I believe that the effective and efficient leaders find ways and create intentional opportunities to learn about everybody that's within their ecosystem. Because when you do that, not only does it show that you care, but again, as a leader, man, you're able to you're able to understand, okay, here's how I need to go about developing this person and that person.
Yeah, it doesn't happen on its own. We definitely have to be intentional and conscious about making those opportunities. So I want to take a break from the serious questions. I want to play a game with you. Are you up for a game?
Let's do it.
All right. The name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. Now, you don't need to give us a one-word answer. Elaborate as much or as little as you'd like to. But we just want to get to know you a little bit better, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Daron Franklin, rapid response round. Your time begins now. A podcast recommendation.
The Pivot. Ryan Clark, Channing Crowder, and Fred Taylor. Obviously, man, just former athletes, but those guys have some great conversations. And for some reason, they've built a safe environment for people to come on and share.
Yeah, that's a really great one. I like that one. What's a practice you'd like to see more people embrace?
What's a practice? I would say continuing to be kind to one another, even if we have different outlooks on life. To continue to be kind.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think this is a good place to point out that there's a difference between being nice and being kind.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Because, if we disagree to the point of we can't agree to disagree, we can still be kind and respectful to one another and walk away, right?
Love it. Who is someone we should all be paying attention to?
Someone, can I give you two?
You can give me as many as you want.
Victor Wemby in San Antonio. Okay. And not because of what he's doing right now, but 10 and 20 years from now, they're going to have more 7-foot athletes that can do what he's doing. So why did I say that, right? Because, man, I believe that guy is showing people that you can't just put certain types of people in a box in life. Because you and I grew up in a time where if someone was that tall, they were in the paint more than they were beyond the 3-point line, right? But look at the game and how it has evolved. Very similar to life. Life has evolved. It's going to continue to evolve and change. So if we can have a guy that's 7 foot plus whatever, move as skillfully and gracefully as he does as a 6'5" athlete, then imagine what our world's going to look like 10 years from now, not only in athletics, but just in our world with so much change and evolvement. So I would say a guy that we need to keep on a notice on is not because of who he is as an athlete, but what's happening in our world and how life is evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. Dispensing with our preconceived notions is a very important skill, not just for leadership, but for life. You said you had another one.
I was going to throw myself on there, but I won't.
That's okay. This is your episode. We can throw you on there.
Yeah, no, man. But honestly, look, I'm looking forward to speaking on stages around the world to impact people in multiple cultures and learn. Along with my lady, we're going to do some things with her dance movement, impacting people and with my words, but also just understanding that just what you see right in front of you is not all what it is, right? You have to have some vision about yourself. Man, get as far as that, close to that horizon line as you can, where the sky meets the sea, and you never know what that vision will turn into.
Love it. I'm really interested in this one because coming up from a sports and athletics background like you have, what is your pump-up song or your walk-on music?
Oh, man, I don't know that I have just one. I'll tell you what, Jason, I went to the gym this morning, man, and recently No Limit and Cash Money had verses out in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, right? And I'm sure that some of your audience members will be familiar with the verses, but I would say anything from No Limit. I like Fiend. He has a song called Therapy that I listen to every morning, just about, and it's just the basis of, man, just some self-love and self-care, and being able to understand that every day, you know, as I mentioned before, when that sun rises, we're winning because we got more time on the clock. You have more opportunities.
Love it. The biggest influence in your life?
Well, I would have to change that adjective, biggest, because there are multiple influences on my life, man. And I would just say this: growing up in New Orleans in the 80s, man, being an 80s baby in 90s, right? There was a village of people that impacted me, influenced me, and are still influencing my life. I always talk about, obviously, my mom and my dad, even though they divorced when I was about 12 or 13. Man, they never stopped parenting. My mom is still parenting. My dad, unfortunately, he died in 2020. But they influenced me in so many ways, right? My mom was a former educator. My dad worked for the post office and was in a military band. So I gained a lot of work ethic from that guy. And then, obviously, man, the education aspect of things from my mom. But I also share this with you, Jason, that, and I share this with my lady, man. Her daughter is privileged to be around her great-grandmother and grandparents. But my grandfathers, man, had major influence on my life. Those were two cool dudes. You know, my mom's dad and my dad's dad. You know, and a lot of my family, they see my mannerisms. They see their mannerisms in me. And I really did try to model myself beyond them. My grandmothers were also influential, but just that large village of family and friends, Jason, here in New Orleans, man, has had the largest influence on me.
That's great. I love to hear that. What is a book everyone should read?
Hmm. One book recently that stood out to me was John Thompson's book, former coach from Georgetown, and I read it a couple years ago. But not only did he talk about the aspect of coaching, right? But he also made sure that in that book, people understood that he was highly educated and he wanted to use his influence to impact every young man that came across that basketball floor in some form or fashion. But not only that, he also talked about how he had to influence some people in the community in a certain way to make sure that his players were protected. So I would say John Thompson's book comes to mind. Uh, if I could just give one right now. Yep.
Okay, great. I'm really curious about this one. What is the best winter recreational activity in Louisiana?
Well, having moved back home last summer, after seeing from afar, we had all kind of snow last winter down here. So people took advantage of that, man. And there are some reels on social media where, guys were in boats in snow and being pulled by big trucks down the streets and things of that nature. But even though it does, it may get a little chilly here, a lot of people still go out and fish, even if the waters are a little cool out. But just from a winter activity, if you're still playing football in the winter, we're deep down south, right? So if you're still playing football when that winter comes in December, that high school wise, that means that you're having an awesome season, and your community and your city is following behind you because you're getting to play and practice some more deep into December, onto the dome.
Yeah, that's great. What is your dream vacation spot?
Well, Jason, I've seen a few places that I would have to nominate for that. But I would say anywhere that has blue water and a beach and a place where I can gather some seafood and vegetables and fresh fruit and either cook it myself right there, with some fire, or have it brought in from the ocean or the sea right to a restaurant. I've been a few places, man, Costa Rica and Dominican Republic, Bahamas, a few places like that. And, those Caribbean and Latin areas, man, really, I'm really attracted to them. And not because of just the waters and the seas, but just seeing the people, right? And how much of a free mindset they have. How they just move freely, man. And I think that they're content with where they are. And I believe that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think there's a lesson there for all of us. What is a trend you're excited about?
Well, I would say I'm interested, Jason, in the air taxis. I've heard, man, that and I've did some research on a few companies that there are machines that are able to take people different places, and those machines are not on the ground, almost like an Uber in the air. And I think that is again something that's evolving with our world, and it's here. So I'm interested to see how that works out, from a trending aspect of things. It's a small trend right now, obviously, but just to throw something out there that some people may not be aware of.
I'm excited about that one as well. There's a lot of technical challenges and procedural challenges with it, but I think we'll get there someday. So,
Yep.
All right, last one. Your favorite sports team or player?
Ever?
Ever or currently?
Well, I tell you what, man, I'm gonna always have to root for the home team. the Saints, even though we're struggling right now. But I'll tell you, man, in 2009, I was living in New Orleans when we won the Super Bowl. And the effect that it had on the region, not just the city, but the effect that it had on the region. And you only being 4 years removed from Katrina and the effect that it had on the region. To be able to live through that experience, through those two experiences, and seeing how a sports organization can impact a region with multiple communities is what was amazing. So, obviously, man, I would always want to root for the home team with the Saints. As far as a player, man, I've always been a Magic Johnson guy. I'll tell you, a guy like Sean Kemp, man, was my favorite basketball player when I was playing basketball in high school. I asked the coach for a number 40, and I tried to dunk like him and everything, man. But Cameron Garnett was a guy that I liked a lot too. Ronnie Lott, I chose his number, wore his number in high school. Not in high school, but in college. So that's where the 42 comes from, right? I wore the jersey 42 at Langston University, and I played free safety, just like a childhood hero, Ronnie Lott.
That's awesome. I didn't know that's where the 42 came from. That's really cool.
Yeah, man, that's my college jersey at Langston University, man. One of my college, and he's like a brother to me, man. We both are from New Orleans. Teammate. He saw me speaking on stage, an Instagram reel, and he was like, "Man, I like what you're doing. That's F42 right there." Well, he was looking at it from an aspect of, obviously my last name starts with F, Franklin, but just the soaring, right, and the elevating. And my high school mascot is a Ron Eagle, an Iron Eagle, right? McDonald 35 High School. So he kind of thought it was, like that. And I was like, okay. And obviously the 42 because we played together at Langston University, and that was the jersey number. I ran with it from there, man. I said, hey, that sounds good. Let's roll with it. F42 empowerment.
That's cool. I love when it all comes together like that.
Yep.
So thanks for playing our game. It's nice to get to know you a little bit, learn some things that we might not otherwise get. Now, when you run across a young man who's looking for your help, or he finds he needs your help, you find someone who needs your help, what's that first conversation with them like? What do you talk to them about?
Oh, that first conversation is more of me listening. It's more of me listening. So the process goes like this, and it's ironic that you and I are having this conversation this morning. I had a 10 minute call with a young man who's interested in the program. He saw me speaking at an engagement, and obviously I shared with him that I work with males ages 21 to 29, and together we customize that personal success strategy to build that confidence, enhance the character, and develop consistency. But he said, man, just the way that you were speaking, I'm interested in learning more about you. So I asked them, all right, on that first call, what's your biggest challenge right now? Right? And we find that out. And then from there, I share with them, the procedure as far as, hey, this is going to be a coaching deal. It's a 4-part series. Here's the cost. We can work together on figuring out how we can get that done. And from there, I send them a consultation form that has more questions so I can collect as much data, right? I'm trying to find out, Jason, in the very beginning, what are some similarities that we have? It goes back to my philosophy of teaching and coaching, man. I want to build that rapport. Because before I started teaching or coaching any kids, I had to find out as much as I could about them. I had to get them to trust me, Jason. So, you asking that question, man, that first conversation is going to be them talking a whole lot, me asking a few questions, and then we'll get into the pregame routine is what I call it, that first session. It's called the pregame routine, where it's not a rapid fire type game, but I will allow them to be able to choose 4 questions. I'll have 4 questions on the board, and they get to choose a question, right? Question or statement. And they can ask me one of the statements or questions. So they do that, I answer, and then I choose one. And they answer. Well, what am I doing? I'm breaking down the ice. I'm building the trust. I'm showing some vulnerability, letting them know I'm human too, right? Even though I'm Coach Frank, hey man, I'm human just like you. So they can get to know some things about me. So after that pregame routine, then one of two things happen. I either continue with the framework, the Beyond the Edge framework, and we get into removing the lid off your jar, or we may get into the 3 S's of success. Or Jason, I asked them, hey man, if we were having this conversation 3 years from now, what would you like to have seen that makes you happy in your personal or professional life? And during that pregame routine, when we have that conversation, I just sit back and listen. I got that from Dan Sullivan, and it tells me which direction I need to go. Because some of those conversations, Jason, some of those coaching conversations, it's not based off of the curriculum or framework that I have. It's based off of their needs. And again, that goes back to me understanding that it's not about me controlling the situation. They're paying me to develop them. So I have to be able to understand that it's not about F42 empowerment and this Beyond the Edge framework. What does this participant need in order to get better? So that's where we go with the coaching program.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Outside of the pregame routine, once you and a young man have developed a relationship, what are some of the questions they ask you outside of the curriculum or the pregame routine? I'm really curious what young men are asking their mentors about.
It's this, man. A few common things, right? And it just depends on also the young man. I've done a survey with some people in that age range. They want to learn more about finances. They want to learn more about how they can advance in their careers. And they want to learn more about what I did at their age to get to where I am now. So we do have young people, man, who are interested in growing. However, sometimes they just don't feel confident to go out and do it in front of a large audience. So hence, for your listeners, man, and your viewers, if you know that young man that wants that personal and professional development, but they would rather do it in a one-on-one setting, then that's what F42 empowerment is for. Because that one-on-one setting, right, celebrating those small wins turn into life-changing moments. Now they come out of the coaching program and they feel more confident to go into larger settings and have conversations. But, we all have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to remind ourselves as people who have been around for a little while, when a young person feels confident enough to ask us a question, and I know we're all busy, we get wrapped up doing our own things, but when a young person feels confident enough to ask us a real question like that, it's really important for us to take the time to answer that question, even if we can't do it for them right now.
Jason, I found that, man, and again, this is one of the reasons why I took the challenge and the leap and had the courage to get out of the classroom. And this is my full-time job, man, building this business, right? But when I sit across those tables with those young men, or even some females, and I'm talking about from the high school students on up to those young professionals, right? And just like you said, when they ask you those questions, you don't always have to have all the answers, but you have to be able to recognize that it goes back to that acronym I talked about. They're asking for help, right? They really are. And sometimes, man, it's just that, unfortunately, in society, man, they go look other places for those answers, right? But that's where even podcasts like this, man, these platforms can be very beneficial because you never know who's listening.
Yeah, I really hope there are some young people listening today or watching today who get something out of this. I know I've gotten something out of it. So now you and I have both been young men, and we both know that sometimes we could be, let's say, stubborn as young men. What are some of the points of resistance you encounter with the young people you work with, and how do you help them get past them?
Well, some of it is just the individuality. They want to do things on their own. And with that, I just continue to show them, and I figure out what part of a team, what their life experience, where in their life experience have they been part of a team. And I'm not just talking about athletic team, right? People come from all walks of life. Some of us may come from big families where we've had large amount of siblings. That's a team. Everybody has a role to play within that household, right? Some of them, their first team may have been the first job that they've had. So I use those dynamics to help them to understand that, hey, man, you don't have to do everything on your own. Okay. And then as far as some other changes, it may be time allocation, right? And from that time allocation, it's just basically being able to show them that, hey, there's something called priorities. Certain things at certain times are more important than other things at different times, and that's how I approach it. But I let them choose, because even though I'm coaching them, I don't know everything that's going on in their life until we build some more rapport and they share that, right? So I'm never, I don't go in, man, telling them, hey, man, you got to do this, this, and that. I'm going to find out as much as I can and then help them to understand priority with their time allocation. So I would say those are the two biggest challenges, is just being able to understand that, hey, they're not doing everything on their own, and also the time challenge, the prioritizing their time,
Yeah, it's really important, because when it comes to things like setting priorities and maintaining priorities, we can't do it for them. We can help them, but we just can't do it for them.
That's it. And that goes also with the coaching. Coaching it, and when you're coaching young adults, right, it's about influencing them. Now, if you talk about younger kids, then it's a whole lot more direct development. But when you're talking about young adults and adults, it's just being able to, how much influence can I alter and impact on them so that they can start to have some different thoughts about decision making, right? And then once they start to own their decision making a little more, that's where you start seeing the success.
I love it. Now, you worked as a teacher and a football coach for many years. What was the transition like for you becoming an entrepreneur?
I'll tell you what, man, for all those entrepreneurs out there, hey, I'm always asking questions and surrounding myself. When I was living in Dallas, Fort Worth, I used to visit 1 Million Cups and different chambers and places like that, man. Jason, every day is a challenge, right? But with those challenges, man, I'm built for it. I've been an all-district high school athlete, multi-sport, all-conference twice, honorable mention All-American in college, and also played professional football, arena football, right? So I'm saying all those things, and I still work out pretty much every day, moving, have routines that I do. I'm built for the challenges, man. Being able to have the freedom of time, the freedom of purpose, the freedom of money, and the freedom of relationships is the main reason personally, right, why I wanted to do this. And it comes with, some challenges, man, but I'm an organized person. I'm a life learner. So I'm always asking questions. And I feel like I can do this until it's time for me to do something else. But I can talk and coach people, and man, have a couple online courses that I'll share with the audience also. So, it's a pivot, right? But it's a pivot in a direction that sometimes is uncertain. But I know every day, man, if I'm blessed to see that sunshine, I got some more time on the clock, and we're winning over here, baby.
Yeah, it sounds like you're up for a challenge, and I think this is the perfect time for you to tell the audience about what you have for them, and what else is coming up for you in the next few months.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, visit www.daronfranklin.com. That's DARON Franklin.com, and connect with me. And what you can do for all your audience members, man, is when they leave their information, their contact information, the first thing is they'll receive a part of the Beyond the Edge coaching program of how to defeat the 3 C's of despair. So they'll get something there returned to them on their email, and then going into the new year, as we're finishing out the fourth quarter and going into the new year, I have the coaching program, 4-part series for males ages 21 to 29, but I also have working with workforce development organizations, because not only the males but the females, these young people, man, that are replacing the baby boomers in the workforce generation, they come with a lot of creativity and technical skills. However, some of them still need some of that personal development to match their professional development. And that's where we have the 8-part Beyond the Edge coaching program that not only develops confidence and builds character, but also develops consistency within the workplace also, to help them to retain jobs, right? And also help them to communicate in a professional setting, and also for them to understand that even though there may be an age gap with some of their coworkers, they still are valued within their team. So, and finally, man, I'm a keynote speaker also, and hey, I've spoken at universities, high schools, organizations, and I'll be speaking at a few conventions and conferences in 2026 also. Looking forward to it.
That's great. And besides the website, where on social media can people connect with you so they can thank you for joining us today and keep up with all the things you have going on?
Hey, on LinkedIn, you can search Daron Franklin. That's Daron on LinkedIn. Also on Instagram, that's at Coach2_Inspire. And have a YouTube channel that I'll share with you, Jason Lee, for the audience in the meeting notes and the episode notes. So those are the 2 main places. And even for we get some younger audiences, have a TikTok page also. F42 Empowerment, right? So the social media is good, man, and it's obviously another way for us to be connected all around the world.
Yeah, that's great. Everyone, please check those out. We'll link all those things up in the episode description so you don't have to go look them up. Daron, I want to thank you for joining us today. This has been an incredible conversation. I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it with someone who can use it. Leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're on a podcast platform where you can leave a review, we would really appreciate it if you gave us a 5-star review. It'll help us build our audience and get these amazing conversations like the one we had with Daron right now out to more people. So we've got a lot more coming your way. So stay tuned. Go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.